What is up, everybody? Welcome to the couch. I'm Pastor Justin. This is Kira. Say hi.
Hi.
You may not know this, but Kira is now the coordinator of middle school ministry at Monticello United Methodist Church. So congratulations. Well done. Well done. Good luck. Praying for you. So excited to have her. And excited to have you all here. What's up, Chad Walker? My boy Chad's on. I hope Karina's there as well. Pat's on. Carissa, make sure you guys share the live stream because tonight's going to be a great conversation with me and Matt Conrad. He's stage left, I guess you would say. He's off stage waiting. But I'm glad you guys are here tonight. We're going to have a great time of worship and conversation. So, before we start, I need to make an announcement, okay? I kind of already made one, but I'll make another one. Because, and this is needed, and I'm going to make an announcement on Sunday as well. I was asked today by someone who deeply cares about me if the stress of senior pastoring has caused me to start not taking care of myself because they saw I had a rapid decline in weight. And they thought that I was on some type of illegal substance and just wanted to make sure that I was okay. And I appreciate that because if you see something like that, you should call it out. That's what we're supposed to do in the community of Christ. That's not what's happening. I'm on a medicine called Zepbound. It's similar to Ozempic. It's a semaglutide. And on that medicine, I've been on it since June, and I've lost 60 pounds since June, which is really exciting. So, no, I'm not on any legal drugs. This actually is probably more than legal drugs. Yeah, illegal drugs. It costs more. But it's working great for me and my lifestyle. It's allowing me to lose a lot of weight, and that's really exciting. So, yeah, don't worry. I'm not on the hard stuff just yet. The stress of the job hasn't got to me. And thank you for that concern. But I also make sure people know I've not shared it a lot, but I'd rather share that information as opposed to let people put me in an episode of The Sopranos. I don't want to be in that space. So just an FYI, thanks so much for your prayers in that space. Hey, Robin, welcome. Glad to have you with us. So tonight, Kira's going to lead us in worship. And what are you singing tonight?
I am loved.
So that's your reminder, is that you are loved. And maybe throughout the day, that line, that reality has not been something that you lived into. Maybe people have told you you're not loved, or you felt not loved, not appreciated, not chosen by people in your life. And I want you to know tonight that God does love you. And just as we see in the story of the prodigal son, that we can come running back to God. You can't run away from God's love. All you can do is run back into it. So we're going to worship tonight, and Kira's going to sing that song. So here we go.
Just as I am, you welcome me with open arms. How can this be? My guilt is undone, my past is untethered, and I leave it behind and run to my Father. There is no disappointment in your eyes. There is no shame, there is only pride. I am loved, Father, I'm loved by you. So unreserved, your heart for me. My fear is gone, I am set free. And there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to measure. 'Cause I am your child, and that's all that matters. Oh, there is no disappointment in your eyes. There is no shame, there is only pride. I am loved, Father, I'm loved by you. There is no distance in your embrace. Over and over again you say, I am loved. You are changing everything. You are changing everything. I believe it. I receive it. You are changing everything. You are changing everything. You are changing everything. I believe it. I received it. You are changing everything. I believe it. I received it. You are changing everything. There is no disappointment in your eyes. There is no shame, there is only pride. I am loved, Father, I'm loved by you. There is no distance in your embrace. Over and over again you say, I am loved, Father, I'm loved by you. I am loved, Father, I'm loved by you.
Said she's only gonna watch Kiera sing, and then she has to go because she has supper company. So you were the thing for Marcia tonight. Marcia and Don, thank you so much, Kiera, for joining us tonight and leading us in worship. Now I'm gonna invite my friend Matt Conrad up. Welcome to the couch. This is your first time on the couch, isn't it?
Yeah. Done. Well, I've been on
No,
virtually.
you're good, bro. We got these bad boys. Look at that.
I've been on virtually before, but
Yeah,
not in person.
but not in person. So he didn't realize that and you might not know this either, we're in the basement of the office. So you have to like go in this secret door, you walk down these stairs, there's an unfinished basement, and then this room. That's kind of it. So yeah, we're excited to have Matt here with us. Matt's going to talk a little bit about himself and give his testimony about what he sees God doing in his life in the past, but also in the current as well. Make sure I didn't miss anything here. Karen, glad to have you back. Thanks so much for being here again. Robin, Renee. Hi, Renee. How you doing? I do feel better, 60 pounds. Thank you so much. That's awesome. We're going to miss you, Marcia, not being here tonight, but that's okay. New love to change, new season. Linda, how you doing? Awesome. Look forward to hearing Matt speak as I was downstairs Sunday. Awesome. Well, Matt Conrad Music, right? That's the moniker. So why don't you tell us, and this is a question I get asked a lot, right? What do you look at? You can look at me. You can look at that camera.
Okay.
So that's the direction. So it's me, you, and look at Mike's face, and the camera's for him, right? So what does it look like for you if you look at your life and say, okay, where's God moving?
Sure.
Where were you first aware of that? Or maybe you weren't aware at the time, but now looking back, you were aware that God was moving there.
Yeah, I mean, without going into it too much, like the big spots. So I noticed, especially, a lot changed my eyes, my awareness of like the Lord and just His presence currently, but through my life really changed a lot after I got married. So my wife and I have been married about 3 years, and we just kind of had some hard, trying seasons. And through those seasons, God really opened my eyes a lot to my past. And I don't spend a lot of time in the past. I kind of am a live in the moment kind of kid, adult, I guess. But I don't spend a lot of time thinking about my past. But God really challenged me to look there first to see how He's moved. And some of those big areas were just involvement through church, through opportunities that kind of were, I mean, we say this phrase a lot, but just truly like God things. Like I've had enough time in my life. I have a couple friends who kind of make fun of me because they're like, everything just always works out for you. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how. And I look back and it's like, yeah, like there's a lot of things. Some things don't. And I just kind of swing it and I make it look like it works out. And I like learn a lot. But there's a lot of things that, are perfect, that are just, yeah, like you can't write a better story. And some stories I didn't get to, even in my sermon, like there's a couple times. So I mentioned how I was able to like record, and my very first EP that I recorded, so there's 3 songs that I had a chance to do with the brothers who are like the band Consumed by Fire. And so they're killing it right now, but they had a season where they were just writing and producing, and so I got to produce with them. And the EP was, I think it was like $5,000 or so, and in my bank account I had like $5,325 or something, like just enough. And I like did the math and calculated, and it like the remainder was just enough money for. She was my girlfriend at the time. We weren't engaged yet, but like we took a trip to Oklahoma, rented a car, and like planned out every gas stop. And I think I walked away with like $12. But like, and it was just one of those stories where like God really, like I kind of said yes to this opportunity and paid for it without really thinking, and then I like go back to my bank account. I'm like, oh shoot. But I had some cool opportunities kind of come from that. So there's like a lot of stories, and when I had that chance to go on like my Christmas tour, there was opportunities where like, you know, I was like, well, it's gonna cost me $150 to get there and back, and the love offering that night was $152, so I could get Taco Bell on the way home, like just random things. And so I have enough of those stories kind of in my back pocket that those are the big areas where God just works in the little things. You're like, yeah, like when there's a story that's written, men can write a lot of cool stories, but when you get a story that just unwinds, like a moment in your life that's perfect, you're like, yeah, that's a God thing.
Yeah.
And I had enough of those. So.
Yeah. So we got one note already. Robert Harlow gave you the turtle emoji, which they do to me often, which means slow down. So you're aware.
Yeah.
I deal with this also. It's something that's in my life as well.
Yeah.
So thank you, Robin, for that as well. And we developed a
That's
signal
so
system for that reason. So one of the things I say often is that faith is believing that God is going to do what God said God is going to do. And I think what you're expressing and what you're experiencing is that God is showing you, because you said that you can see it now, but you couldn't see it then. God is showing you where God's been faithful, even when you didn't know it, so that you can have faith going forward, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about faith in that way, you probably haven't had a lot of experiences where in that exact moment you're like, oh yeah, God's crushing, God's killing.
Yeah.
It's usually in hindsight, right?
Yeah.
Or on that drive back, it's, oh yeah, well, clearly God crushed that. Like,
Yeah.
And you know, money's not everything, but we talk about money in some of those ways, and that's something that happens, right? I have a friend that has similar stories where he's like, man, I needed $300.12 for this, and I randomly found 12 cents on the ground, and then someone gave me that. It just God just works in that cool way. But I think it's also because at that time we're very aware of what we need. We need the finances. It's easy for us to see God in those things because that's where that's where we're looking, right?
Right.
So you've written some songs. Name some songs for me that you've written.
So my favorite, I have one that's unreleased that I really like called "In Your Presence" that I've sung a couple times at like the drive-in and stuff. But my favorite that's released is probably "Abba Father," and then "Already" is a fun one, and "Frontlines" was the one that kind of started everything for me.
Yeah.
So those are the big three that I.
So talk to me about the way in which, and so you know, there's no script here. There's not like a pre-existing, this is what we're going to talk about. So if you get stuck, let me know. But talk to me about the process of writing music with God, if you can. Because I feel like the Spirit's involved, right?
Sure, yeah.
But what? How is it, you know?
Yeah, so a lot of times, and this is actually a craft that I've grown in. I've been a part of some communities that have helped with this like specific process.
Nick Smith's here, by the way, and says, Matt! Just FYI.
So, yeah, so it started when I was young. Like a lot of the songs that kind of formed were just me just kind of getting away. For me, it was a way that I could be intentional, like almost like my prayer. But early on, I really just kind of wrote what I felt, and it was a way for like God to kind of write back to me. It's really fun actually going back through some of my old songbooks because I'm like, oh, and like there are things that like Frontlines is one of those songs that I wrote, and then 2 years later it just made a lot of sense. Like it didn't make, to me at the time was a cool, fun little song. I threw some scripture in there and like thought it was really cool, and then years later I was like, oh, this is my heart, like to be a warrior for Christ and my duty, my role as a Christian. So sometimes it's cool to see God kind of work in that way through songwriting. But one of the things now I start almost every time when I sit down to like write intentionally, I start with like a psalm. And it's called psalming, but you really just sing the psalms, sing them, and then eventually you kind of change them here and there and like really just pick at it. I've had a few. I've been fortunate that Abba Father was this way, that it was a song kind of just gifted to me. Like in a season I needed it, God put it in my lap. And part of why I love that song so much, because it was really like written for me and people similar with my story. It's written for everybody, but like in that season, I really needed it, and so I resonate with it. Because that song only took me about 15-20 minutes to write. Because,
Wow.
like I said, it's just a gem. Like God just kind of laid it down. Most songs you're picking at, like we would use the term like gold mining or gem mining. Like you're digging, right? Like just trying to find the right rhythm, the right words, like to capture. Because it's really hard to capture like God better than what the Bible is, and in a way that's still accurate. So it's a skill set for sure, but a lot of the times it's digging, a lot of times it's just the daily stuff too, like everything you're doing outside of the songwriting session. So reading your Bible daily or praying daily, or like really carrying a heart. This is a big one that I've like worked on, is carrying a heart of like yes, and carrying a heart of thanksgiving, and just really trying to stop the complaining and stop the gossiping and stop the bitterness, and like living a life that way, so that when I come into a writing room or my own room to sit down, I'm already in the right heart space, and then God can kind of work through that and have that conversation.
Well, I've seen a transition, maybe it's not really a transition, but especially in the last 5 years, of some of the bigger songs that are out on K-Love and the worship space. They're using a lot more direct scripture than the past. I think of the song Rattle, just the bones of Elijah. Most people have never read that story in the Bible, but it's like, oh wow, they made this story applicable in Scripture, and that's cool. And that psalming aspect, I think there's so much in the Psalms that we don't remember. It's a singing prayer book for the Jewish people. It's Jesus' songbook, and clearly it's probably some good stuff in there. Let's go with that direction. Carissa reminded me of something just now. She said a few years ago when we first started the couch, we made a playlist of people's favorite music, and Steve recommended already. So you're on our couch playlist, which is kind of cool. Hey Nancy, glad you're here as well. So when you sit down to write, talk about bringing yourself in that space. Have you noticed yet? Because I know you're not actively recording right now, but I'm sure you're still writing, right, in that process. You're a dad now.
Yeah.
How much have you seen your writing morph from that view of a father? Have you seen that yet in your writing?
I haven't seen it necessarily in my writing of some of my stuff, but I've seen it in a lot of like maybe different aspects of faith.
Yeah.
Like one of the things has just been really just like this concept of like love, and I've always been like a really like compassionate person. I feel like everybody says that, but like I've always had this like softer heart, but this concept of like really like having a baby now, like, well, what could she do to make me really mad, but still like I would love her. So there's been some stuff like that. But I will say I did a co-write with somebody, so it wasn't my song, but it was a co-write with another songwriter for like a secular song, with like little dabbles of like Christian faith in it, but it was really a secular song, and it was talking about like the love of a father, because his story was really neat, and essentially like he was getting married, and she, like his wife had already had a kid they were bringing in, but he'd never had a kid, and was trying to figure out, like he was being a first-time dad and a first-time husband all in one, and was just like wanting to write about it. And so I was able to kind of bring that, because that happened while we were pregnant, so like preparing for that season, and I was like, whoa, this is just really different, to have that perspective. But I haven't seen it a lot in my own necessarily personal like songwriting, but in other aspects of faith, there's definitely like moments where I'm like, shoot, like essentially like really it's when like my baby gets really frustrating, and I'm like, and then I'm like, I do the exact same thing, like I am the exact same way to God, like I am frustrating sometimes, and it's kind of really humbling. So I'm like, hey, we're just gonna pick you up and hold you.
That's a solid T-shirt. I am sometimes frustrating to God. It could be a T-shirt that I could rock. Like sometimes I frustrate God.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah. So so you're back home, right? Back in Monticello, doing the physical trainer thing, right? Mm-hmm. At the high school, but I think also just the school corporation. I'm assuming in general. Is it also
it's mostly high school.
Yeah.
I'll see some middle school here and there, but when I cover them.
So your faith journey, you've raised up some highlights just now about when you and your wife were away from Monticello. Mm-hmm. Coming back home, does that bring up memories of what God is doing? Is it, I guess the question is, sometimes you go home and it's hard for people to see you in the new way you are. right? I'm not sure if you experienced that, but
Mhm.
you come home and it's like, oh, it's Matt. I used to change your diaper. And you're
Yeah.
like, that's weird
Yeah.
now because I'm a man. And you're like, you shouldn't say that. But with your faith, because
Mhm.
you're a different Christian than you were then,
Sure.
right? How's that experience? Have you experienced that at all? That shift?
I mean, I think anytime, especially when I left, because I really left. I mean, I was involved even through college, but really like my senior year and kind of on the note that we left on in 2017, I kind of think I left with a lot of like, at that time in my life, there's always been the three doors that I've always like prayed to keep open are athletics, music, and like my education. And I think when I left, I was, all in for athletics and music and faith and faith and education were all kind of there. And now, when I left this place, my door was education. Like a lot of people in my circle saw me still in school or like pursuing my academic career. Very few people, knew my athletic background because I was in a different state. And very few people knew my music stuff because I didn't really like put it out there.
Yeah.
And then I moved back, and I think there's a lot more of that door kind of shifting of like I'm no longer as much like some people will still see me through that athletic lens where like, oh, you were the athlete and that. But I think there are a handful just because of some of the opportunities that I've done here where people see me like I get a lot at the school because high school, I don't know if it's a senior class, but like sophomores through seniors were a part of my very first like Christmas tour. So like when we did shows, like they were the kids in the audience. So
Yeah.
like I get a lot at the school, like, oh, you're the Nashville singer kid. I'm like, well, no, I'm a Monticello singer now, but like
Yeah.
I get a lot of that stuff, and so to answer your question, maybe a little bit, but I also think that I you people will see like a growth. Like I think I've always kind of been the same little seed, but now I'm more of like a tree. Like I'm just grown. I think people see some of that growth. I think they see it through like just being married and all the grown up things that are happening. I don't feel like I'm treated necessarily the same, but there's definitely like there are moments where it's just like, hey, like I wasn't like I'm grown now. Like more so in a career field. Like sometimes you
Yeah.
get that just because you're young or whatever.
Yeah.
You're just like, hey, but I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, you did. And it was great. Now, people might not know that you led, you were the worship leader for camp this summer,
Yeah.
For our high school camp. That time down in Epworth Forest, right? We were there, and you were there. And what is it like for you, and not just that experience, but any experience? Because I imagine there are some times when you perform,
Sure.
and there are some times when you lead worship, and I think probably a Venn diagram, and those things often overlap. But what's the difference for you in performing and leading worship?
Yeah, I mean, the big answer, like the biggest thing, and I kind of drill this into people who I'm leading with. The biggest thing is really the heart space, and it's really, really tricky because, like, nobody can judge your heart. Like, nobody can, like, I can't judge your heart. You can't really judge my heart. Like, you can judge my actions, but even then, like, it's a really sticky game when we try to essentially do God's job.
Mm.
And so it's really frustrating because sometimes, like, when I'm on stage and I just feel like people aren't worshiping, like, I don't know what's happening. And that's also something I learned along the way because I've had so many times where I felt like, man, this set is dead. Maybe at camp or at some worship nights that I've done, or like just middle school events. Sometimes we see it there. And sometimes I'm fortunate enough to see like that middle schooler will come up and be like, in middle school I've seen it actually a lot, but the middle schooler will come up and be like, oh, like, hey, like I really like this song. I'm like, didn't act like it. Like why do you say that? But it resonated with them here in the heart space. I've also been fortunate enough to see middle schoolers as high schoolers and see some of the long term impact that when you have that authentic like worship space, have to create kind of creates it, plants a seed and grows. But the difference, I try really hard. One of my favorite songs is Hillsong Young and Free. It's called I only want to sing, but it's essentially addressing this of like I don't want it to be a performance. I do pretty strictly like worship events. Sometimes I'll do like singer songwriter rounds or like things that are more entertainment focused because I think there's a space for Christian entertainment.
Yeah.
But really, like my heart is in like creating a space and creating an environment, and so the difference is like to keep it from for me to keep it from being a performance is really the heart space and like going in with the heart of like yeah, I'm here for the Lord, and I'm here to create this presence, because I firmly believe like I can't lead worship, like I can't lead other people there if I'm not there myself.
Mm.
Where the like lies or the temptations of performing kind of come in are really in places of like not like when I have like lack of confidence. When I get too caught up in, am I gonna miss a part up, or am I gonna not sound good, or what have you? When I get into those places, and I make it about me, then it's really tempting to be like it's a performance. It's really tempting to get frustrated with your bandmates because they don't have their parts down. But at the end, there's a line too. I think of, we practice to make sure that we're giving our best to the Lord. Like we practice so that we make sure there's no disruptions, or we make sure there's no disturbance. Like I don't want anything I'm doing on stage or anything my team is doing on stage to disturb, like wherever y'all may be in the congregation or online or whatever. Like don't want to distract you from the moment that you may encounter. But yeah, the big answer is like it's really just the heart space. Like you just have to, like, worship comes from the heart. Worship comes from a posture. Like worship is a heart posture and a body posture. And so we do these things not to, like, we raise our hands not to look cool on stage or for you to see our armpit sweat. Like we raise our hands because it's a posture that we're saying to the Lord. And it's all things for me change in that world when like I just heard messages about like the importance of like why we kneel when we pray, or why like that kind of why we open our hands, like all what it all means and signifies. Yeah. It's really cool. But yeah, the heart space is probably the biggest part.
Awesome. So we got a couple minutes left, and real quick, we're going to pray after Matt answers this last question. So make sure you post any prayer concerns in the chat so we can pray for you as well, because we believe in the power of prayer. But to that point you just made, for someone who maybe they attend church and they like the music, but they don't know how to enter into that worshipful space. If you could give like a top 3 things for a person who wants to enter into that heart space of worship that you're talking about, can you give 3 tips for someone to be able to do that?
Yeah, and I'll do it quick but slow. You're talking.
No. You're good.
It's definitely a skill. Like it's definitely just kind of like praying, or those things. It's a daily discipline. So that's what I would say. Number 1 is get in the habit of like worshiping daily. I think as a capital C church, not necessarily Mumsy or anything like that, but as a capital C church, over the past 5-10 years, we have like romanticized, almost idolized like worship as music. And the reality is like worship is a lifestyle. And so, we call it like habit stacking. So if it's from the music side, it's being daily discipline of like, I'm going to listen to worship music. I'm going to listen to stuff that's focused on this, not sometimes, and it's hard because we have K-Love where it's great, but a lot of it's CCM, a lot of it's entertainment, a lot of it's not scripturally sound or not meant for worship. And so finding some of those songs are tricky, but there's resources and I would help. But finding worship music and having that daily discipline, so you're practicing it on your own. You're practicing the skills of singing and all that stuff, but you're practicing being comfortable with what it is to really be surrendered, like in your heart space. That'd be like the first thing. So the daily discipline. The other thing is like you got to get over the ego of it, and I say this as a person who had ego about it for a long time. Like at the end of the day, like nobody cares if you sound good or don't sound good. Nobody cares if you look silly or don't look silly. The biggest thing, and again, it's having the heart to worship and not be a distraction. So don't go over the top where it's distracting, but also don't really worry about it, because the reality is like if somebody else is using their attention to care about what you're doing instead of entering into worship, that's kind of on them. And if you're leading from the stage, like I say this a lot of time to my team, because sometimes I'll have teams that are just like so eager to be on stage, and I'm like, hey, you gotta sit, like you gotta be in the crowd, because they need examples from not up here. Like sometimes it's really easier to have a barrier between the stage and off stage, and so like we need examples in the crowd too. So when someone else is focusing their attention on you, but you're authentically just in it, it can give them confidence to enter that space too. So daily disciplines, kind of get over the ego of looking silly or sounding bad, because A, God doesn't care, so nobody else does. Like, it doesn't matter if other people do. And the third thing is, I don't know, really just being present. Like, that's, God, I forget what story. It's in the Bible about, I think it's like the Samaritan village, but it's essentially this really quick story, and it's what I wrote, like, your presence about. But it's essentially like, God isn't going to go where he's not welcomed. Jesus did this with his disciples, where he would send people first, and if a city didn't want him, he didn't go. Like, it wasn't this whole dramatic, like, I'm gonna force my way in. He just was very simple, like, you don't want me here right now, that's okay. Unfortunately, you don't get the blessing of my presence. And so that third thing is really working on, like, genuinely, authentically just having a prayerful heart and an open heart, saying, like, I just want you. I don't care necessarily what it looks like. I lay down my expectation of your presence, and I just want a taste of what you will have to bring, what your presence is, taste of heaven kind of thing. So really just having that authentic desire. And if you go into it with that, like a heart to surrender and a desire for the Lord, like he'll show up in one way or another. And sometimes we don't like how it looks, but like he will. And he does. He has, for me, enough times that I know he will for everybody, because he's the same God.
Same God.
Yeah.
And Matt's voice is a little rough right now, but at some point we'll have him back and he'll play my presence, and then we'll be able, or your presence, we'll be able to hear that song as well.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for being here tonight, Matt. Loved hearing your testimony and
Yeah.
just hearing where God's moving in your lives. And make sure you guys show love to Matt in the chat. Oh, your wife is on, by the way. She says hi.
Nice.
She didn't say hi, but I'm assuming she would want me to tell you she'd say hi. So as we come to a time of prayer, let's lift those up that are currently going through stuff. I do want to make an announcement real quick. A friend of Mumpsy Online in our church, and of me personally, Keith McLeod, passed away this morning. Keith has been instrumental in creating this little campus at White Oaks Health Campus of people who gather together on Sunday mornings. Because of him, they all walk or wheel themselves down to the recreation room and they watch the service together, because he said, hey, let's go watch church, let's go do church, let's be a part of church. So just
Awesome.
sending love to his family in this time, and just the impact that one person can have on the entire community. So praying for Keith's family in this time. So let's pray together. Oh, gracious God, we thank you for this day because you've made it, God, and we thank you because you've given us the opportunity in this day to seek after your presence. God, you've given us an opportunity to once again come and ask you just to dwell with us, not for the blessings, although those are great, God, but just to spend time with the blesser, just to spend time knowing you, God, and knowing the love you have for us. To God, there's so many things today, God, that are on our hearts and on our minds, things that would seek to rattle us, God, or shake us off of the ways in which we seek you. So tonight we pray that you would take those things, that we give them up freely to you, God, because we know that you will do so much more with them than we ever could. For those experiencing grief tonight, God, for Keith's family, I pray that you would draw them near to you, and that they would know your peace and love in this moment. For Paul Bushman and his family, God, as they're kind of going through something right now with medical things, God, and potential end of life, pray that you would be with Paul, that you would make him know your presence, God, not just know about it, God, but experience it. They would know that you are with him in this time, and for his family, that they would know the love and grace that comes from Christ, and you would give the peace that goes beyond all understanding, God, that you would be there in that moment with them. God, for all the people that today, just like us, need to hear that they are loved. Let us not only receive that word from you, God, but let us tell others about it, because our world needs more love, especially today, as we seek to draw closer to you and closer to one another. So God, bless us this evening. Let us rest and give us the opportunity to be the people you've called us to be again tomorrow. We ask all this in the name and power of Jesus Christ. Amen. Well, friends, thanks for being here at the couch tonight. I hope to see you next week. Thanks, Matt, for being here with us as well. And I pray that as you go out throughout your week, remember, you're not alone. You can help. You can be a part of this community we call Mumpsy Online by going to our close Facebook group and posting your prayer concerns, or if you see somebody else post a prayer concern, praying for that person. We do believe in the power of prayer, but it has to be us actively praying for one another. And we'll also, I'll ask Carissa to do this. I know she's on. We'll post that link, that Spotify list, so you can continue to worship, and maybe that'll help you in your process of being a worshipful person with a heart for